Welcome to Moms with a Call. We're not here to preach, convert, or fix you. We're here to listen.
We're Mackenzie
and Rebecca, two women with messy stories, honest questions, and a quiet hope that maybe Jesus looks a lot more like love than we were ever shown. If you've ever wondered if there's a place for you in all of this, there is. Come, have a seat at the table. You're safe here. You're welcome here. Let's begin. Welcome back to Moms with a Call. Today we have a very exciting episode. I will turn it over to Mackenzie to introduce our guest for today.
Yes, we have Meaghan Hampton. We're so excited that you are here.
Excited.
Meaghan is a licensed professional counselor associate and the founder of Soul Care for Families, where she helps Christian parents raise emotionally healthy, spiritually grounded kids through the integration of psychology, theology, and child development, which is part of the reason she's on here because I'm so excited for my own, not just me, but everybody to learn about this, especially having two kids myself. So she draws from her training in counseling and her experience as a mom herself. She equips parents to break cycles of fear and shame and instead build homes rooted in connection, grace, and the gospel. Her work combines practical nervous system and attachment insights with a Christ-centered lens. And she's passionate about showing parents that following Jesus means caring for both our souls and our bodies. Ooh. Through her growing online community, her digital resources like sacred co-regulation, and her speaking and writing, Meaghan is pointing families towards healing and freedom in Christ. So welcome, Meaghan.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here today.
Oh, I'm so excited. Yeah. So I actually found you from one of you've had a couple go viral, which congratulations. That is no small feat. So social media is hard. How has that journey been? Tell us a little bit about your background in counseling and then with social media and how that all got started.
Yeah. So whenever I went to graduate school, whenever I took a childhood development class, the program that I was in was a Christian program, and they really emphasized both like scientific, psychological findings, evidence-based modalities, and then they also really promoted looking at it through a Christian worldview lens. And so that's how I was trained. And whenever I took that childhood development class, I just remember being in awe of all the stuff that I was learning. And I had two really young kids at the time. Like my youngest was like probably around a year old. My oldest, my son, he was probably like 3-ish, maybe a little bit older. And I was like, wow, if I had known some of this stuff, even in these really early years, there's things that I would have done differently. There's some changes that I would have made. And I was so shocked at how some of these findings were to the stuff that I was hearing in Christian circles, because my faith is so important to me. My community is so important to me. And I've been really fortunate that the church that I go to is really well resourced, but I've been a part of communities that haven't always been that way. And so I just really wanted to make those resources as available to as many people as possible and just equip as many Christian families as I could and to get this information there. So that's kind of why I started Soul Care for Families.
Oh, and is it a practice and a online education community, or one or the other?
That's a great question. So the therapeutic practice that I work at is called Counseling Futures, and that's in Friendswood, Texas. I also see people via telehealth, and so that's a lot of fun. Soul Care for Families is separate from that, but I do get a lot of clients through Soul Care for Families that end up seeing me as a therapist as well.
Amazing.
That's so cool. Yeah, we all have little kids. Like it's Phoebe's not even that little anymore.
Yeah, my oldest, she's 6. So she's in first grade. And it's funny you mentioned this because when I was pregnant with her, I was 25. So a little bit younger. My friends were still fresh out of college, living a different lifestyle. And Instagram wasn't so prominent for information. So I really didn't get this era of education for parents, essentially. Yes. So I'm just so fortunate for people like you on Instagram now, social media, helping parents, because I know what it's like to not have it and try and figure it out on your own and hope hopefully you're doing the right thing. But yeah, she's 6. And then my little boy, he's 4. He has autism and he's nonverbal. So we have a good balance going in our house as far as parenting.
Yes, definitely.
It's been fun.
And then I have 2 little babies too. Our girl Noah, she's 3. She just turned 3. And then I just had Forrest, our son, turn 1. So I feel like I just also had him. But so it's so great to have these resources. And Rebecca and I talk about this. I'm like, wait, you didn't have taking care of babies for sleep courses? Or like, I can't imagine. Yeah. But at the flip side, there is so much out there and there's so much on social media that if you're just going to whatever you see or whatever comes across your feed, it can be really dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it can become kind of like an echo chamber in a sense, the way the algorithm works. Yeah, so there's definitely some downsides to that as well.
It's like sensor overload, information overload, where I'm like, and sometimes you just kind of have to trust yourself and your relationship with God and know that He's going to steward you the right way.
Oh, 100%. And I think that is a big heart of mine in the work that I do is ultimately what I don't want to tell people how to parent as much as I want to encourage people to find healing in their own lives and to rely on the Lord so that they can trust their God-given intuition and to be able to access that a little bit more easily instead of outsourcing that to, other avenues. Yeah. So that's a big heart of mine. So I think that's cool that you mentioned that.
And it's so true because I started to notice I had a lot more of a groove once I recognized that I need to learn how to regulate my nervous system before I respond. And that hit about 3 years old with our oldest daughter, where I was like, there's a lot happening here. I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. And so once I really, and I'm still learning how to regulate my nervous system and parent at the same time. Yeah. It is a journey for sure. But,
it is.
Was there ever a moment when you thought that doesn't line up with God that you were reading about in the Bible and then studying that in school?
Yes, definitely. Yes. So there was a mom's Bible study that I was a part of that I really enjoyed, and everybody in it was so nice and so wonderful. And we were reading a really popular Christian parenting book. And there were some parts in it that didn't sit well with me. And I was like, this doesn't align with my experience, but I don't have language for this. Like maybe my heart is leading me astray. Maybe I'm just wrong here. Maybe, like this is the way that I need to do things. And then the more that I learned about childhood development through my graduate program, I was like, no, actually my intuition was guiding me in the right direction. I think that, some of the theological frameworks and maybe the scripture that the author was using was just a little bit misguided. And that's understandable because scripture can be really difficult to interpret sometimes. And so, but I remember looking back on that and thinking like, oh, I didn't have a language or a framework for understanding why it didn't sit well with me, but now I do. And that was looking at childhood development through a Christian worldview lens. And all of a sudden, everything just kind of fell into place. And it just all of a sudden just started making sense.
Yes.
Yeah. What was, if you don't mind sharing, what was the scripture that you thought that didn't sit right with you that they were maybe focusing on?
So it was, I always get them confused. I can't remember which trip it was, if it was the father or the son. I think it was the son. It's the more recent book that was out. But the theological framework in general that he used for how he viewed children as sinful and how their expression of their developmentally appropriate needs were, how that was an outworking of their sin nature. Whereas in my graduate program, when we started studying Christian philosophers like Kierkegaard and the way that the brain itself develops, seeing that a lot of what we're told is rebellion in children is actually the way that God designed their own nervous system to kind of come on board and different their brain development, all that really fun science stuff, that there's a reason why all of that happens at different stages and that it's not necessarily an outworking of a child being like super rebellious or something like that.
Oh,
I love
so interesting. I love that too. So I guess that kind of leads us into our next question of, as a therapist, so you're working with families not only in soul care but actually one-on-one too. Are there parts of the Bible that you see misinterpreted or misguided like all the time that is something, maybe it's your content. I think it might have been the one that I saw. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the
Yeah,
one that
no,
I
we're good.
saw about spoiling, what is it? Something with the rod and spoil the child.
Yes.
Yeah. Is that
Yes.
one that gets misinterpreted quite a bit?
Yes, that's probably the most popular one. The phrase "spare the rod, spoil the child."
That's it.
So, I think a lot of us heard that a lot growing up. What's interesting is that that's actually not a Bible verse, but
Oh,
it's just
interesting.
though it is. And I thought it was for years just because I heard it so much within a Christian context.
Yeah.
That's actually from like a 17th century satirical poem. But I think that it's
Interesting.
taken from, there's a couple of different rod verses in the Bible. One of them talks about how if you like strike your son with a rod, he will not die. And that verse in particular is talking about the way that Jewish culture functioned was that when a like teenage boy would do something that would really shame the family, or maybe he would even break a law, that striking him on the back with like this reed type instrument was pretty culturally normative. Like that's just kind of what they did. And it was in like a last ditch effort to like save this kid from going completely off the rails. Because if he were to keep breaking laws, like eventually the community might stone him or something like that. So
Yeah.
in that sense, that was seen as like a lesser evil than, okay, we're going to have to like stone this guy in like 5 years. Um,
Wow.
so,
It's
but it
wild.
was kind of intense.
Yeah.
When we read that, and many Christians in the West read that, because of our culture, people assume that they're talking about spanking, and they're talking about
Mhm.
spanking young children because that's how we see physical discipline in our Western culture today. And so we
Mhm.
think like, oh yeah, like we can't spare the rod, that will spoil him. If I strike him, he will not die. But that's actually not what the Bible was talking about at all. It was talking about like a cultural practice that they did back in the day. There's also some wisdom literature, like in Proverbs, there are other verses that discuss the rod, but
Mhm.
typically in that genre of literature, the rod is used as this idea of guidance, like a shepherd.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So rod was more of a metaphor for shepherding our children. That if we, it's like he who spares the rod hates his child, I think is what it says. And so it's like, yes, if we don't help disciple and guide our children, then, that is a form of like not loving our kids well. And I think that
Yeah.
that's the message that the Bible and that scripture is trying to get across there. When you look at the New Testament, the only two commands that parents are given, the first one is to not provoke your child to anger. And the second one is to teach your child the commandments of the Lord. And so when we look at discipline through that lens, specifically through the New Testament, it makes those other scriptures about the rod make a lot more sense.
Yeah.
And we view discipline as discipleship instead of like this corporal punishment, like punitive framework.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. I myself grew up in a family that did spank, and
Yeah.
so my mom and my parents were wonderful. I mean, did they do
Yeah.
everything right? No. I mean, they're human. I'm
Right.
sure I'm going to make mistakes myself. I already have, and
100%.
so I never really aligned or understood spanking, and I didn't know why. And I would ask my parents, why did you spank? Did you? And my mom was like, well, I spanked because I thought it was biblical. I
Yeah.
thought that that was the only way, and that I
Uh-huh.
was actually doing you a disservice if I didn't spank you. And
Right.
it goes to exactly what you just said. And, she's like, other than that, I didn't know. I don't know. I didn't really know why. And I was like, did it
Yes.
make it better? Did I, because I
Does it
feel like I
work?
just got worse when you would spank me, like it
Right.
extended the tantrum or the episode or any of
Hmm.
that. And she's like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know. I think it did make it worse.
Yeah.
And so, Do you see that a lot in parents where they don't really know why they're spanking either, other than they're just being told?
Definitely. And especially within the Christian context too. And I think that's why I just have such a heart to just get this information out there.
Yeah.
Because understandably, so many people haven't heard of this and haven't looked at like the cultural context when it comes to interpret, or the genre of literature that the spanking verses are featured in. And so I really think that a lot of Christians are just trying to be faithful to the text.
Yeah.
And they're understandably misguided, and they're just doing the best they can. And so I just want to be able to offer up some alternatives to Christian families.
I love that. Yeah. And knowing that there is another option when disciplining our children, we don't have to follow the norm if it doesn't feel right to us. Because there is a lot of, sometimes there's shame paired with the parent who's choosing to do the opposite of what they've been told. So that's kind of hard to work through, where you're feeling like, well, this really aligns with my family, but I feel like I'm being shamed for it, and now I'm confused a little bit. Can you speak on that?
Oh, definitely. I think that's so important. And people will reach out sharing that experience all the time. And I think another thing that contributes to that is when we're not using corporal punishment, it's almost as if we're viewing parenting as like a marathon instead of like a 5K. Corporal punishment can be pretty effective short term in like getting a specific behavior to stop, but long term it causes more issues. And so we choose other avenues, more like attachment focused avenues of discipline, we're not going to see some of the same like quick results that like fear-based punishments would yield, but long term the results will end up working in that child's favor, typically, not all the time, but typically. And so there can be that shame of like, well, Susie, who spanks her 5 children, they all obey.
Yeah.
The first time.
Yeah.
They all seem really pleasant and they're all really behaved. And, my kids, I'm not spanking them and they struggle with this or that or this or that. And that can continue to heap on the shame as well, because it can feel like what we're doing isn't necessarily working. And so what I would encourage parents struggling with shame to do is to remember that you're in it for the long term. You want well-adjusted 35-year-old adult children who are in a happy marriage and, love their children well and love the vocation of their choosing, not necessarily like immediate compliance today. And I feel like that perspective in and of itself can help mitigate some shame, but that if that continues to pop up, I think that's where therapy is so helpful, as it can really help find the root of that individual person's shame, and we can help bring that to the Lord.
Yeah, because a lot of it is fueled from people pleasing from maybe their own childhood. I guess I'm kind of speaking about myself, but
you're right. No, you're so right though. That's a really common experience, definitely.
Yeah. So I love hearing you explain it like that, where you kind of zoom out and you see the bigger picture of, we're not just, raising them for now, we're preparing them for adulthood and marriages and friendships and relationships, which is so important. And childhood, I would assume, plays a huge role in that, if not the biggest role in that, I would think.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
So I'm really glad you said that. That made me feel really hopeful.
Yeah. Good. Well, so talking a little bit more about discipline and versus punishment, what truly is the difference between, from a psychological standpoint, of punishment versus discipline?
Yes, that's a great question. So what helps me in viewing the difference between discipline and punishment is more of like a punitive approach of, hey, I'm going to try to prevent you from continuing this behavior by giving you this experience that's going to be like painful, either physically or emotionally or psychologically, whatever it is, right? And again, that there can be results with that, whereas I prefer the idea of consequences, and I like to view consequences through the form of, it's called scaffolding in psychology. And so if you think about like when you're seeing a big skyscraper that's being built in the city and they're going to have like all this scaffolding on the side of the building kind of holding everything together and the workers are standing on it and they're fortifying it, making it stronger. The stronger that the structure becomes, the more scaffolding they remove.
Mm.
And so that's also true in parenting. It's part of our job is to scaffold our kids. And as they get more capable, we begin to remove scaffolding. And so the way that I like to view discipline or consequences is like, okay, if my kids are a little bit older now, but if one of them like forgets to turn in their homework, a punishment would be like no TV for, the next week. As a consequence would be like, oh, I wonder if he had enough scaffolding to follow through with that. Because I know his heart. I know he wants to do well in school. I know he wants to turn in his homework. How can I make sure that he has enough scaffolding to be able to do what he needs to do? It sounds like he didn't have enough scaffolding there. Okay, buddy, I'm going to sit down next to you while you do your homework for the rest of the week just to kind of make sure that you're staying on top of it. And then I'm going to watch you put it in your folder. And then when we get to school, like I'm going to like watch you hand it to your
Yeah.
teacher, right? And as I see you build those habits, then I might not have to be quite as involved this next time. And then a natural consequence is I'm not going to save him from the bad grade that he got for not turning that in.
Yeah.
Okay, that's part of how we learn. And so just being able to like compassionately let our kids experience the natural results of their actions. And sometimes as parents, we do need to use discernment and figure out when we need to do that ourselves. And I there's a time and place for that. But a lot of those consequences can also just kind of be natural. They kind of happen naturally.
Yeah, I love that you said that, the natural consequences, because that's kind of what Evan and I, my husband and I, we've kind of decided with our kids, although there is that shame piece of, ugh, are we being too passive? Are they going to be bad kids? Are we passive or gentle parenting to a fault?
Uh-huh.
And is that common too that you see with people that come to you? Are they worried that they're going to be too much of a gentle parent?
Yes. Yeah. And I think it's a valid question. I really do. Because when you look at, so there's like a spectrum of parenting, and there's three different types of parenting that researchers have studied. So I always get these two confused because they're so similar. All the way on one side is authoritarianism, right? Authoritarian parenting. And that's like the do as I say, not as I do, don't question authority. That's where like spanking also would be. The middle one, the middle road is authoritative parenting. And then all the way over here, we have permissive parenting. So if you look at authoritarian parenting, it's low warmth and high boundaries. Authoritative in the middle parenting, that would be high warmth and high boundaries. And then permissive parenting would be high warmth and low boundaries. So gentle parenting, I think, can fall within authoritative parenting, but it can also go into permissive parenting. So I think that there's an understandable like apprehension toward that side of gentle parenting, because I mean, from what research has said, both permissive and authoritarian parenting styles don't yield the best results. So I think it's worthwhile like apprehension to have.
Yeah.
And ask ourselves like, okay, is the type of gentle parenting that we're doing, is that falling within that authoritative framework and not being too permissive? I think that that's totally valid.
And maybe it's different for each kid. I've heard that a lot on like each different kids have different parents, even though we're the same person. It's each kid has their own way of behaving and they need maybe different boundaries. But how do you keep it all the same? Sorry, I'm going a little rogue here, Rebecca, but
It's okay.
how do you parent different kids but still stay fair?
Yeah. One thing that we say to our kids a lot, and we actually got this from one of our kids' teachers, she would say that fair is not the same as equal. Equal is everybody gets the same thing. Fair is everybody gets what they need. And so we have like basic family rules that our kids are really familiar with, like don't hurt each other with, like don't use harmful words, don't harm each other physically. Those are like the two main ones, and all of our other rules kind of fall underneath those umbrellas. And so those are constant for both the kids. Those do not change for either of them. but the outworkings of how those play out with each individual kid, because I have an 8-year-old and my daughter just turned 6, so she's like a young 6-year-old. We do have some level of different expectations for them just because of where they're at developmentally. So yeah, I think that being able to have like general rules of like, hey, these are the same for y'all, but the way that that might work for each of y'all individually could be a little bit different just because of your ages and what you're capable of.
I always tell my kids that they each have their own brain and each is unique. So the way we parent is going to be catered to which particular brain you have.
I love
it. Makes it fun for Phoebe because she is like always logically thinking about stuff. So.
Yes, I love that. I love how you worded that too. That's so good.
Thank you.
I know, that is good. Yeah, whereas Noah is still so little, it's really hard for me. And that's, my husband also grew up in a very, probably more authoritarian, that's the authoritarian, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. He grew up I would say, I think I honestly had two different parents. Like my dad was very authoritarian and my mom was kind of, I don't want to say permissive, but between permissive and authoritative.
Yeah.
But then she felt biblically she needed to be authoritative. So there was a lot of confusion. And, that's why my husband, so I feel so conflicted when we parent our own kids with like, this doesn't feel aligned. I don't know if we should do this. And then he's like, but this is what you need to do. And we're back and forth. And I think we just our default is to do what our parents did to us.
Yeah.
And it's so hard as a parent to actively go against your programming.
Yes.
And I think that's another reason maybe why a lot of parents struggle, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's so much more work. Evan and I always say it's so much harder because we're working on it and trying to actively be, not that people who, I don't want to shame people who are, spanking or doing anything else because they're just doing what they've been told, but it's so hard.
Yes. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, to regulate yourself and then regulate your kids. And then even the scaffolding example, instead of just being like, oh, no TV, you're instead having to sit now with him and do his homework with him. And then also take him, watch him hand it into his teacher. And so it's more work on you.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong.
Right.
It's just more work.
Yeah. When I heard you use that as an example, I was like, well, that is the shepherd's rod or the shepherd's staff.
Yeah.
She is guiding him back to where he's supposed to be with his homework. That's sitting with him. That's helping him. That's, giving him the tools he needs to complete the task that is in front of him. So I was like, wow, well, that's pretty much it. That's
exactly how it is with the sheep.
Yeah.
Well, that's a cool way to love that parallel.
Yeah.
Oh, well, okay. Let me see where we are in terms of questions.
I did have a discipline question pop up in my head randomly, but do you ever see clients who've been disciplined as a child kind of view God the same way, that the same discipline that they received from their parents? And how do you help them through that? Because I feel like we're setting our kids up to be healthy adults with healthy relationships physically, but I guess I never really thought about setting them up for the spiritual relationship with God to be healthy as well.
Yes, 100%. That's such a good question. So what you're referring to is in psychology, it's the difference between, in Christian counseling specifically, the difference between a God image and a God concept. So our God concept is what we learn in church and in Bible studies and in us reading the Bible, anything that we're learning cognitively about God. Our God image is how we experience him relationally and in our heart. So we might know in our heads, God loves me no matter what. But then some of us may have this default setting of if we, start to fall into sin or really struggling with something, or maybe we haven't read our Bible in a month, or, something like that is going on that has led us to feel shame. And we think, oh my gosh, he's so mad at me. Now I feel like I want to come to him even less because I'm so worried of how he's going to judge me, whatever that is. That's our God image. And our God image is formed by our attachment to our primary caregivers and our relationship with our parents growing up. It can also be influenced by like the church culture that we're in, or if, the kids are involved in like a Christian school, like what they're hearing from, what they're experiencing about God. So it's not just the parents, but that is like the primary place that kids learn how to relate to God. And so that I think is why it's really important for us to just kind of slow down in our parenting journey and take a step back and focus on our relationship with God and into truly what we know is true about God, and therapeutically work through maybe some of the cognitive dissonance between how we actually act with God and what we know to be true about God, so that we can then model that and live that out with our kiddos. Because I see that all the time as a Christian counselor, is the outworking of that.
Yeah, because how confusing is it to hear something preached of how you should discipline your child, but then also how you should treat your relationship with God is almost opposite in some situations with some churches or some families, where I can really see how the confusion is there for the adult in particular.
Yes, definitely, 100%. And so a lot of the work that we do in therapy is untangling that and getting our God concept and our God image and our experience of God to align a little bit more, so we can kind of put that on experientially.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. It just, I feel like I had the realization that I think I have those tangled right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be on my list to work through with my counselor next week, because
that's beautiful.
this is something that Rebecca and I, talk about a lot, but yeah, I never ever realized that my image and concept were kind of the same. And so that would be so confusing to our kids as well. And that's something I'm trying to figure out right now, is how to model that. And so how much of parenting is modeling versus, I guess, is there a difference between parenting and modeling? Or are they one and the same?
That's such a good question. So Dan Siegel is a wonderful author. If anybody's looking for resources, he's the first person I always point people to. He has a book called The Whole Brain Child that's really good. And the main premise of the book is this idea that children primarily learn through modeling. So we could tell our kids whatever we want, but the main way that they're going to learn is through watching us. And so we can tell them not to get upset over little things, but they're really going to learn based on what I do when I break the spaghetti sauce jar or something like that, or I like break the bowl, and it shatters into a bunch of pieces. And that even if I don't have to handle that perfectly, because good enough parenting, the research shows there's actually some conflicting research, but if you take the averages of all the things, it's around 40%, getting it right 40% of the time.
Oh, that's good. I think we can
Pressure's off.
Right?
I thought it was like 100%.
Right? I'm like, that's the best news.
Yeah.
I got to tell Evan that. He's going to be like, what?
Yeah.
Yes. And so when we mess it up, repairing and like walking the kids through, be like, hey, maybe it was a little scary when mommy got so frustrated that she broke the spaghetti sauce jar, and like, this is something that mommy's working on. This isn't your fault. Like, mommy's working on this, and I just want you to know that like your feelings matter. And I'm going to try to handle this better next time. And so they do primarily learn through modeling, but I think part of that modeling is repair. Is them getting to mess up, and then how we handle messing up.
Yeah, repair has been some of our sweetest moments with Phoebe, where we just sit. It's like, I'm learning right there beside you, girl. Like, I don't know how much I processed learning how to regulate my emotions either. So I'm right here with you.
Yeah.
And we have some of these repair moments that I really actually treasure.
Oh, do you want to share one really quick?
Yeah.
If you don't mind.
Gosh. I think for us, it's really like we we'll go into a quiet space, and the first thing we do is like we snuggle. And then we kind of just talk about what would have happened, what I could have done differently. I make sure I apologize, and then what she could have done differently. And I will say now I'm kind of like thinking about something. Phoebe has a really, really, really hard time saying sorry. My cousin's wife is a child's therapist, and she's like, there's a lot of shame paired with saying, I'm sorry. So to sit with her and kind of even me model, sometimes I've had to apologize for her to people because she just can't do it. But she'll like stand beside me and cry and watch. And then what's really, really in our repair, what's changed our relationship is we say, we all do bad things. Mommy still does bad things, but you're not a bad kid. And then we kind of practice saying, I'm sorry, because it's a real fear for her. But those repair moments of just snuggling and talking through things, it's like the bonding gets even deeper for us.
So beautiful. And that's such a gift that you're giving her. Because like going back to the whole modeling idea, it's like her knowing, especially that she struggles with that, getting to watch you do that. Every time she watches you do that, she learns that it's safe to apologize.
I love that you say that, because I thought I was like, well, maybe I'm being passive by not making her do it. Like, is this helping? You know, because we think this as parents. Like, am I actually hurting her in the long run? So I feel affirmed.
No.
Thank you for that.
It's so beautiful. Yes, it's like if you like snap at her because she's like, I don't know, not getting her shoes on fast enough or something, and then you like sit down with her and you're like, hey, I'm so sorry. I'm really working on this. And that responsibility falls on me. Her just watching you do that, her nervous system is learning it's safe for me to apologize, even if she's not ready to do it herself. Just by watching you do it, she's learning that it's safe to do it. And so that's really beautiful. It's such a gift you're giving her.
Thank you so much for saying that. That felt healing.
Gosh. Yeah, that makes me feel better too. I'm like, because there's been so many times where, you know, I feel so guilty about having to leave Noah sometimes when we have to cool off for a second, because she's very big feelings, deep feelings. And sometimes I'm just so overstimulated, I can't even function, and I have to step out for a second. And I feel so guilty and so much shame for doing that. And I feel like I'm leaving her. So then I come back in and I'm like, I'm sorry, you know, I wish I'm trying my best, and mommy just needed to take a second so she could calm down. And that way we can sit here and we can take our deep breaths. And she's like, it's okay, mommy, I'm sorry. And I'm just like, oh, it's the sweetest thing ever. And then she just sits there, and now she's like, I'm taking my deep breaths. And I was like, yes, we're going to take our deep breaths together.
That's beautiful. And she's learning. Okay, maybe like when I get upset, like I see mommy take a break for a minute and you know, regulate herself, or, you know, do deep breaths together or whatever. And so she's learning like, okay, sometimes it's okay for me to take a break. And for me to, you know, do these regulation strategies. And sometimes we do that together, and sometimes we do need some time apart to do that. And so I think that's really healthy that she's watching you through that process.
Oh, good. Okay, good. Yeah, I love when we first started having the tantrums, I did Dr. Becky's Good Inside stuff, and that was great, because I was you know, mind boggled by all of that. And I was like, oh, I have a deeply feeling kid. And I wasn't a deeply feeling kid. So, but my husband was. And so he, watching the whole thing, he was like, I think I'm healing myself.
Oh, that's
all of this.
That's so sweet.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
you know, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. Continue.
I'm so sorry. You mentioning that, you know, a lot of what we talk about in therapy for parents who are, you know, either learning how to regulate their emotions or struggling with different aspects of parenting, which I mean, all of us are to some degree. What we talk about is when we get triggered by our kids, it's not our kids that are triggering us. It's our childhood wounds that are triggering us. And
Yeah.
it's our wounds that inform our triggers. So that's why something that triggers me might not trigger my husband, and something that triggers him might not trigger me, because we have very different childhoods. And so it's really cool, because whenever we get triggered, when we view that as an opportunity for God to do a healing work in us, and we choose to act as our true self, it indirectly then begins to heal that wound that informed the trigger in the first place.
Oh, I love that.
So every time we get triggered, like, obviously it's not fun, it really stinks, but every time we do get triggered, it's actually a good thing, because it's a opportunity for God to do a work in our heart, and for us to kind of heal that inner child version of ourselves little by little, experientially, over time.
Yeah. And it shows
Wow.
that God really, truly never wastes a moment. Like, even small
No.
moments like that, he's working on us as the parent, on them as the child, while also using this situation that might be uncomfortable and not fun and confusing at the moment to heal us at the same time. He doesn't waste a single moment. And it's just so beautiful to see that.
Yes, that is so beautiful.
Well, going into life now and kind of past that, so once these parents have figured out, and us, I mean, myself included, how to parent, how do you handle the shame that comes with, oh my gosh, I messed up. I did do something wrong. Did I? And I know you just said we're like those moments where we messed up and we restored it and make it right. But I think this is something my mom carries a lot. She just feels so much shame for how she raised us. And even though I tell her all the time, I'm like, Mom, you did the best you could. It's okay. You know, you've made her. What would you say for parents that really carry the shame around with their adult children now?
Yes, that's a great question. I think that's where the gospel is, like, front and center, because the Bible talks about how Jesus bore our shame on the cross. And I think that the Bible very intentionally uses that language, because, Jesus knows that shame is fortunately, such a common emotion for us as humans. And he knows that it's not something that he wants us to carry. There's a difference. Brene Brown talks about the difference between shame and guilt. Guilt is, I made a mistake, I did something bad. Shame is, I am bad because of my mistakes. And so, because our identity is in Christ, we have no need to feel shame. It's actually really healthy to feel like a little bit of guilt here and there, because that changes how we can reconcile that with the Lord, and that changes our decisions moving forward. I have things in, my early years as a mother that I'm like, man, I wish I would have done that a little bit differently. And I think that's a healthy experience of guilt. But before I got to that, I was really struggling with shame. And I really had to bring that to the Lord and lean into my identity in Christ and lean into the gospel. And so that's what's helped me personally the most.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, it is the gospel. It's so hopeful and so inspiring. And I think we do forget as Christians all the time, and believers, we forget that he took it all. He took it all on so that we didn't have to live in our shame and feel that shame. And he died for it all. And so it is so freeing when we really give it all to him.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, as a therapist and working with people, what does a healthy, God-centered discipline look like practically in the home?
Mm-hmm.
And how can parents do this going forward? Or do you have any techniques or, like you said, frameworks that they can remember really easily when their child is having a meltdown or a tantrum that they can think of? Or I'm sure you probably teach this in soul care for families.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, definitely. So my favorite go-to is this idea of connect and then correct. It's so tempting for us to just jump to correction right away, understandably.
Yeah.
But when you look at the brain, and this is also mentioned in Dan Siegel's works as well, but if, like, my hand is a brain, right? The very front part is our prefrontal cortex. And when kids get dysregulated, that kind of flips up and goes offline. So when someone says like they flipped their lid, that's essentially what's happening. That prefrontal cortex is going offline, and the child is then operating from their amygdala, their survival brain. So like fight, flight, freeze, those responses. And we can't learn it from that part of our brain. We can't internalize information. We can't make the kind of changes that we want to make when our brain is in that state. We have to get that prefrontal cortex back online. And the way that we do that is through the process of co-regulation. And basically, it's so cool how God designed our brains, because we have these things called mirror neurons, and our kids have them too. And basically, what happens is their brain, regardless of like, it's really more of our tone and our posture and our breathing and our heart rate. Like their mirror neurons pick up on our mirror neurons, and they borrow our calm, not necessarily calm, but at steady nervous system when they're and so if we really want to disciple them and for them to learn the skills that they're lacking so that next time that situation goes differently, we have to co-regulate with them first. We have to connect with them. And then once they're more relaxed, they're more calm, they're more regulated, then we can tap back and kind of have more like discussions or corrections around the behavior that was going on. Now, that's not 100% true all of the time. Like if a child's running into traffic, we just need to correct them and get them out from the moving.
Right.
Most of life, like if a sibling is teasing another sibling or had a rude tone or didn't turn on the TV when they were supposed to, stuff like that. Connecting and correcting is a really helpful framework that I try to implement in my own life and then share with my clients as well.
Yeah,
I love that. I feel like that's exactly what you do with Phoebe then. If you do a little snuggle, you're like connecting with her.
Well, it made me want to cry listening to you, because my son, he's nonverbal. So he can't tell us really when he's upset. He just starts like stimming, or what he'll do, he'll come and he'll wrap around us from the back, and he'll just hold on to us, like around, his arms will be around our neck, and he'll lay his head on our back, and he'll just sit there. And I'm like, I know, I'm trying not to cry, because
I know I'm gonna cry.
It is seriously like, I didn't realize that was helping him so much to just be with us, and that he is getting connection from that, because we can't always have those same moments with him that we do with Phoebe, but to know that he's still getting so much connection from us is like, I'm just so thankful for that. And thank you for saying that. That was really healing for our family. I can't wait to tell my husband, like, we're really helping him when he does that.
Oh, definitely. Yes, he's picking up on it. It's this silent language of our nervous system, and that's so beautiful.
He is a beautiful child. He really is.
Sounds like it.
He is. He's so special and so sweet, and he just has the best heart.
Yeah, he's a very kind,
you can just
little boy.
Yeah, he is. Oh, well, what encouragement would you like to give moms or dads listening who feel like they messed it up, or, we talked about the shame piece, but did they mess up their kids? Is it ever too late to kind of correct or change course, even with adult children?
Yes, it is never too late. It is never, ever too late. Attachment is something that is dynamic and always, kind of moving and changing, and can be influenced regardless of age. And when we are going to mess up, we are going to, hurt our kids in some way. We are going to wound our kids in some way. And I think that's probably the hardest part about parenting is knowing that. But in safe, loving relationships, we can own it, and we can take accountability, and we can do our best to make it right. And that's all that we can do. That's every healthy, safe relationship. There's no such thing as like a perfect relationship where no one ever gets wounded by another person. I mean, I think we can look at like friendships and marriage, and there's always going to be, withdrawals or ruptures here and there. And anytime that we seek to repair with our kids, we're really giving them a gift, because they need to experience that with us as their caregivers, because it's a skill that's going to serve them for the rest of their life. So it's never too late.
Yeah. And it's kind of like how God is with us as his children when, I guess, when sin entered into the world and there was that first relationship fracture between God and Adam and Eve. I guess he's been providing repair for us too this whole time. So do you see repair biblically? Like examples of it?
Yes. I mean, I think what you're saying is so beautiful. And I think that's the primary example of sending Jesus, right? Is this idea of like, hey, even though we were the ones that ruptured the relationship, how beautiful was it that he sought us out in an act of repair?
To connect before he corrected.
Yes. And so, we see that modeled in the life of Jesus. And so then that's something that we can live out with our own people, our kids, our spouses, our friends, everybody.
God is the ultimate parent. I always say this, especially when I was reading Isaiah, and I talk about Isaiah all the time, but he is just such a perfect parent, and he models parenthood in such a beautiful way. And so I love that connect to correct framework and seeing that show up in Jesus and in the Bible. It's just, I feel like this conversation, I've had like so many just little light bulb moments.
Good. And going off of what you're saying, I think you're so right, because when we do mess up, like that's when we, even as young parents, can really lean into the gospel, because we can trust Jesus to fill in those gaps. There's no such thing as perfect parenting. There's no such thing as getting it right 100%. We're really just doing our best and trusting God with our kids more than ourselves. And so being able to lean into that, I think, is so important.
Yeah. Oh, this has been so good. All right. I feel like is there anything you wanted to add before we kind of go into how people can work with you if they really liked what they heard? Or
I don't think so. You guys have asked awesome questions. It's been
good. I'm so glad. All right. So if there are parents that are listening and they want to continue working with you, what resources do you offer for them is there group coaching? Are there one-on-one sessions? How can they work with you?
Yes. So depending on the state that people live in, I do offer Christian counseling services. And that link is in my bio on my Instagram account. And so I can meet with people in person or via telehealth. And then I also have some like digital resources, digital PDFs. Right now I have one out called Sacred Co-Regulation. And so it's kind of like a emotional style, short little PDF that walks people through the basics of co-regulation and leads them through like some heart level questions. And then more recently, I started something called Soul Care Circle. And so it's a Substack community where I can post longer psychoeducational videos. So on Instagram, if a video is over 3 minutes, the algorithm doesn't push it.
Yeah.
And so this way I can, talk for like 5 or 10 minutes. I like to view it as like an actual parenting course that's released like 5 to 10 minutes once every week. So it's easier to digest and apply.
Yeah.
And then it's less of an upfront cost. Like a course like that would typically cost $200 to $250, whereas this is $6.99 a month. And so it's I think it's more affordable for parents with, young families. A lot of us are on a budget, and so I think, I can reach as many people as possible. So that's another resource.
That's really wonderful.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
And we will drop those in the show notes too. So you gave me the links, and so there's Substack, and then depending on the state, is it just telehealth laws that restrict you from meeting with people? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they might change. They were supposed to change it in May, and then they like docked that. They're going to vote on it. So it might take like another, year or so. Okay. But as of right now, some states have different laws than others, but that might change.
we'll put the link in there just so they can, reach out. And we have a lot of moms, obviously, since we're moms with a call. We have a lot of moms that listen. So I think this is going to be so, so helpful. Every episode this season, our word has been surrender. We've sat in prayer and been like, Lord, where do you want us? What is the theme of this season that we're in? And right now, for both Rebecca and I, it's been surrender. And so we end every episode with asking each guest what surrender means to them.
I think the first thing that comes to mind is just surrendering where the Lord has me in this season of life. And so I think it's in Psalms where it talks about how the lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. That, there's some things in life that like this season is really fun. And then there's other things where it feels like, oh, I can't do as much as I want to do here. There's only 24 hours in a day. Or, there's some things that feel confining at times. And so just being able to surrender to the Lord and trust of where he has me in the season that he has me in. And like what you were talking about earlier, Rebecca, that he doesn't waste any moment or any season. And so kind of surrender to that.
Yeah. And receiving maybe what he has to give you in that moment. And I'm glad you said that before the holidays start, because that's when the madness happens. I'm like, okay, I will be taking that advice and applying it immediately.
Absolutely.
The holiday gauntlet is going to start.
Yep.
Oh my goodness. Well, Meaghan, thank you so much for coming on here. I cannot wait to join your Substack.
Me too.
So I will go do that. We will be in there.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun.
It has been.
Well, we'll have to have you back on another time when it's getting crazy out here with our kids and we need a little bit more help.
Us.
I would love that. I would love it.
Oh, all righty. Well, have a wonderful rest of your day.
It was so nice to meet you.
Thank you. So nice to meet you.
Oh, nice to meet you guys too.
All right. Bye. Oh my gosh. She is so sweet.
She is a precious gem on this earth.
Oh my gosh. Seriously.
I loved that.
Thanks for being here with us today. If something resonated, maybe a sentence, a silence, or a story, hold on to that. If you felt seen or stirred or simply curious, we hope you'll join us again. Until then, stay open, stay tender, and remember, there's always a seat for you at the table.